Hello, and welcome to BiT Evolution. BiT Evolution is a indie platformer made by Major Games that focuses on kind of the evolution of retro consoles by taking us through several different worlds themed after older consoles, starting at the very beginning. 1 point for left side, and we're moving. Now, at the very beginning of the game here, we have one set jump height and one set movement speed, which makes the first little bit here very focused on just making sure you actually jump in the right places. And this. So what's happening here is I'm closing the game because at the beginning of that cutscene, the world select unlocks. Because usually the game boots you straight from the end of that cutscene into 1-1, so it unlocks the world select at the beginning of the cutscene. However, if I reload the game by closing and reopening, I can just access it before the cutscene usually finishes. That saves about 20 seconds and lets us into 1-1, where I immediately jump into spikes. In this game, you have two alternate versions of each level. There's the main version, which is the rendered world that I'm in right now, full of color, life, and basically what it's supposed to look like. And then there's the realm of code, which you saw me take damage to enter. I can take damage at any point where there's an enemy or a hazard and enter the realm of code, where different things can happen, and it's supposed to be a harder version of the level. However, there's no level exit in the realm of code, so I have to find a portal back into the rendered world. And that's something I have to keep in mind while routing, is that if I have to go into the realm of code, I have to go back. So I don't want to go there unless it's required or it saves a lot of time to go there. There I did use those enemies that track your position to jump over a wall because it's faster than, you know, moving to the left a bit. With one set speed and one set jump height, you really just want to focus on moving to the right as much as possible, and having to move to the left is just not very good. That being said, though, every level in this game is routed out specifically to try and make sure that you're doing the right movement as much as possible, just to really reduce the amount of time you're losing more than maximize the amount of time you're saving. It's not like there's some hidden speed-up technique, it's literally just I'm holding a direction during this game. It gets more developed as we get into more advanced technology that the game's trying to represent. But with this world actually being based off of games released on the Atari 2600, we're not that advanced so far. Now we're going to be heading into the forest here. Every level theme, so every kind of like, for example, that first 3 levels was kind of like the fields or the plains, has 3 levels associated with it. So once we get to 1-4, we're going into the forest here for 3 levels. The first 2 worlds will have 12 levels, while the other 2 worlds have 18. So that's 4 and 6 level themes respectively, for a grand total of 20 different level themes across 60 levels. The boss always takes the level theme of the last 3 levels in the world. So coming up, every level, I might as well just say this now, every level in World 1 has a required visit to the Realm of Code to get over a wall or something of the sort, so we usually try and play it safe. Here, this is an example of what happens if you take damage while in the Realm of Code. You die and get sent back to the beginning of the stage in most cases. There is one checkpoint flag in each stage, and getting hit in the Realm of Code after touching a checkpoint flag will take you back to that flag, but a lot of, as you see the flag to the left there, hopefully we won't be needing checkpoint flags because taking damage is bad. In the Realm of Code, that is. In the rendered world, it's fine. It's a little bit weird to get used to everything in this game, but once you do, it's really shown to be the movement game that I always try and play it as. Gonna be careful here because there's a very small chance to fall through the platforms like that. If you saw the small gap between platforms, it is possible to fall through that. So now we're out of the forest, we're going to be going into the river, or the water, whatever you want to call it, with this stage. I'm going to be going through the realm of code here, because not only is there a required visit about halfway through the stage, but if I go now, I don't have to swim through as much water. I mentioned there's one set speed of movement right now. There's kind of two, actually. The water you can only move one speed in as well. However, the speed you move in the water is slower than the speed you move on land. So not going in water is a good thing. Of course, we will eventually have to go in water, but I'm going to be using a special trick for this once I get into the next stage. This is called water skipping, what I'm going to do. I'm going to be constantly jumping at the edge of the water, like this, and what this does is it makes me move through the water while not being in the water, so I don't have to deal with the movement speed that the water usually gives you. Alright, I have to be really careful not to get hit there because the animation of going in and then back out of the realm of code means I lose 5.5 seconds every time I go there unintentionally, so hence why I'm playing it careful. Sometimes I really just don't want to go there if I don't have to. Speaking of safe, this level can be done a lot faster if you want to play it really risky. I don't want to right now. And now we're headed into the final levels of the first 3 worlds. These are the pyramid levels, which is a good place to end a world in these kind of ruins, I guess you could call them. What do you call the insides of a pyramid ruins at this point? I don't know. But, I mean, we're exploring, which is kind of what we wanted to do throughout the entirety of World 1. There's been a little explorer NPC that we've been skipping cutscenes with. The hitboxes for those spiders are kind of weird, but it lets us jump at them like that just fine. It's like you have a really slight edge on the side to jump off of them. Of course, all of this has been tested to maximize the amount of hold right time. But honestly, some of the hitboxes just kind of like to mess with you. Like, it did not look like I should have jumped where I just did. But now coming up on the last stage, we have a lot of stuff to do with these mummies. In particular, this part coming up here, we're going to have some pretty narrow platforms to stand on while trying to navigate around these guys, just like that. Funny glitch, that guy gets caught stuck in a loop of exiting the bush if you skip the cutscene before he exits the bush. And this leads into our first boss fight, Blah Bomb, what you want to do is you want to crush a mummy to try and crush him with a mummy, so that he will split up into a bunch of pieces, and then you have to break all the pieces. The way the pieces jump around is one of the few elements of luck in this run. And you can get a 1 cycle if you're extremely lucky. However, I didn't get that lucky. Now here, we can't skip this cutscene, the game won't let us, so we're going to do the same thing I did back at the beginning of the run, where I close and reopen the game, and the game will give me access to World 2 now. It saves about 1 minute and 45 seconds here, so it's pretty big that I do this. And this leads us into World 2, which is themed after the Game Boy. So we have a little bit of a graphical update. You know, it looks a little bit cleaner. But the gameplay here is just about the same. It's just that a lot of things are much harder. There are more difficult enemies to deal with. And a funny little actual Easter egg is, you might notice, the collectibles. So I never mentioned, but there are collectibles in this game that differentiate any percent and 100%. Each stage has 20 pixels for you to collect to unlock a challenge mode version of that stage. And in this world, actually, they are green to reflect the green screen of the Game Boy that you might remember. The pixels don't do anything other than unlock the challenge mode stages, so they're not required at any percent for anything at all. In older builds of the game, they actually were required for you to still collect a certain amount of them to access the final, or to access just the boss of each world, but that was not implemented into the final game because people trying out the game at, you know, indie conventions didn't like that. Which makes my life a little bit easier in terms of routing out this run. Trying to jump here. Those armadillos have a pretty weird range on what they like to roll at you. They kind of like to use your height, but then a certain distance and your proximity to a platform to if they should roll at you or not, so I kind of have to play them out a little bit. Otherwise, I can get sacked easily. And if the game doesn't let me out of the water here, I get to use a fun little glitch called ground water jumping. If I go to the bottom of a body of water to where I'm standing on the ground, and then swim all the way out of the water without ever losing height, the game will kind of still think I'm swimming when I leave the water, and it will let me jump in midair once I exit the water. It gets used in this level because, you know, the level design was kind of weird with the water. It almost requires perfect water skipping. And I have to be careful here because that enemy is in a position to ruin my day. World 2 introduces the first levels that you can do entirely in the rendered world. And preferably we get to do them entirely in the rendered world, due to the previously mentioned animations of the Realm of Code. And this level is kind of one of those levels that I like to use to showcase kind of how specific this game can be, and how it can be a good speed game with just, you know, the skill you have to do some of these levels quickly. Because with the set jump heights, these birds can be your best friend or your enemy. And for the most part, they were pretty friendly. They have the same cycles. That first boss I mentioned is one of the only things of luck in this game. There's one other that I'll bring up later. But I'll bring up this now. With levels that I'm not required to go to the Realm of Code in, comes Realm of Code skips, where I actually am able to skip totally required entrances into the realm of code, such as when I use that bird at the beginning of the level to jump over a wall. I was supposed to use the realm of code to go through the mountain, but I didn't do that. And as such, I saved about 5 seconds. So now we have 2-7. We're in the clouds here. This first stage doesn't have too much going for it. We just have to, you know, jump on the clouds, which are disappearing platforms. So if we stand on a cloud for too long, we get destroyed. That's one of my favorite strats. You can run off the side of that platform and bounce off the bird to keep holding right for longer. It's one of those strats that I just love a lot, even though it's really minor. Although I guess there's no that major strat in this game. With everything being a level-by-level basis, you can't really do much major skips in levels. Funnily enough, the cutscenes get more skip love than the game itself. There's some other things, though. Even, like, one of the bigger things later in World 2 that I like to show off. And there's not a portal there. Something that's actually fun about this game is if you go into the realm of code in an area you're not used to going into the realm of code in, it can cause kind of improvisation in which you have to, you know, find a way out. And let's just say some levels don't go wrong, so you get surprised when they do go wrong. And although many parts in 2.8 go wrong, that's not one of the ones I was expecting to go wrong. And here, this hole in the wall is not available in the rendered world, so it actually saves time to do the damage boost, because it takes over 5.5 seconds to get here normally. Again, the metric. I like to call it the realm of code metric. Does this thing save 5.5 seconds or more? But that's enough of the cloud levels. We're going to be heading into the end, which is something weird. Halfway through World 2, we lose our ability to skip cutscenes. Like, I'm pressing the escape key, and I don't skip it. So I have to mash through these with the spacebar. Which is my jump button. Alright, but now we're in the caves, which have these kind of sticky stuff on them. I can basically do wall jumps now. I can jump off of them even then when they're attached to a wall, but I can't walk or move in them. So if it's on the floor, I have to jump out of it. And these bats are being very mean. We're good, though. Those bats are kind of like the enemies from World 1's Realm of Code, where they track your exact position on height and distance, but move height and distance based at different speeds. Which is a disaster combination. And then one of the actually more dangerous enemies in this area are the water droplets from the ceiling. Those things are on really weird cycles where they like to alternate and then share, or just kind of go between each other. And if you're not careful, they are going to spawn on top of you, to put it bluntly. But now we're... Okay, I have to go the right way on the map. You have to move to the next level on the map yourself. So one thing that can add up is in this run is making sure you know which direction to press on the map screen. But sometimes you press the wrong direction. Like there, I meant to click down and I kind of moved my finger to up accidentally. Yeah, now we're in the last level. Before the boss. Which this boss is going to be a lot kind of a bigger spectacle than the previous boss, so However, it is going to be a completely pattern-based boss, which is neat, because, you know, the last luck-based boss can kind of mess you up if it wants to. So jumping into the rhythm, into the battle against Snake Spear, which is a pun, I hope you understand. Snake Spear is a completely pattern-based boss whose main gimmick is that, in a lot of cases, they won't go to the next attack until every bat on the screen is dead. So just like this is about hitting Snake Spear as quick as possible, this is also about getting rid of bats as fast as possible. I can actually make less bats spawn here by hitting him on his head fast enough in that first cycle, which you saw me do there. There would be way more bats here otherwise. And the game doesn't know how to accommodate for this. So now the bat spawns are going to be like really weird for a little while. There will be a point where I have to refresh the platforms though, and that will kind of fix everything that I might offset by doing the fight weirdly. Other than that though, the one thing I can really do to speed this up is every bat will come from either the ceiling or the wall. So I want to stay on this top area, otherwise killing the bats will take longer. And I have to be careful with these bats. Okay, this is actually fine, because I'm setting up a skip here. So, at the beginning of the third cycle, he does this attack where he floods the room with water and then swims around for a while. Now, usually you don't take damage on those bats, and the only 2 platforms that you can hit him with in a fight where you need 3 platforms to hit him with are gone. So you go into the Realm of Code to refresh the fight. However, as you just saw me do there, I waited for a specific point of the attack where he swims around, and then I decided to go to the Realm of Code kind of willingly, and it started him off with a bat attack instead of him swimming. That is a way to skip the swimming attack and saves 40 to 45 seconds, I believe, over doing the fight the intended way of watching him swim. But now we're going to be sent off to World 3, which is going to be themed off of the NES. You know, the classic home console. And with the NES, we get the best thing in a lot of games, power-ups. In particular, the Armadillo power-up that we get for the first 3 levels of World 1 is the best thing in this game, really. So while we're rolling, we have a much faster movement speed, which we can combine with our new jump heights. Now our jump height will actually change depending on how long we hold the spacebar. However, we have one set very short jump height while rolling. So in order to circumvent this, what you see me doing a lot of the time is, you know, unrolling, jumping, and then immediately rolling again. And that will kind of make the game put me in rolling before the jump can think I'm in rolling. And I can get full height jumps with the rolling speed throughout the whole roll. Which makes navigation so much quicker because it allows me to, you know, have full range of movement in midair, which means I have more places to do proper movement. Because usually if you're late enough into the jump and you decide to do a roll, it'll just start to plummet you. But if I do it early enough, that doesn't happen. Gotta be careful there to not hit the beehive. If I hit a beehive like that, it'll start summoning a lot of bees from the side of the screen, and the safest way to deal with them is to just keep rolled into a ball until they go away. Because you are invincible to enemies when rolling. However, unfortunately, with the entrance of the graveyard stages in 3-4, we're not going to see the Armadillo suit again for a long time. However, we are going to see the introduction of skeletons that throw boomerangs, which are some of the most evil enemies in this game, especially in a set of levels that ideally you never have to enter the Realm of Code. Oh, that's unlucky. Yeah, the jellyfish are bouncy, and this level is actually one of the more decent levels to get stuck in the Realm of Code in, because there is a path to the end that is fairly fast in the Realm of Code. However, the animations make it actually slightly shorter than doing this level optimally in the rendered world. But if you get on a jellyfish bounce like that and don't react fast enough, well, you're gonna die. Fortunately, the checkpoint flag made me recover that quickly, which kind of plays into the improvisation section that I mentioned earlier about accidental Realm of Code visits. However, that's a level I failed enough more to know than, say, 2-8, which is where the last problem happened. Alright. Now, this upcoming stage is actually probably one of the bigger run killers in terms of just losing larger amounts of time. If you're trying to go for a Realm of Codeless 2 or a Realm of Codeless 3-6, because of this part right here, there's going to be 3 skeletons that throw boomerangs all in a line, and they are mean. They will mess you up. Using a groundwater jump there to get out of the water sooner. Groundwater jumping, for some reason, likes to persist between, you know, all worlds. Although we don't really use it in World 4, but that's besides the point. We're now in the treetop stages, which introduces a lot of bee enemies. Now this also presents a problem where if we have to climb up some stuff, we can scroll up faster than the camera. So, we are now in a set of levels where we have to kind of react to bird cycles or bee movements, homing bee movements, or bee cycles, where we might not know where they are depending on if we messed up the usual cycle. Okay, there we go. That jump, that second to last jump, is one of the hardest things to... I wouldn't say it's the hardest, but it's one of the easier ones to mess up and get hit right at the end of the stage. I paused a little bit too early there trying to skip a cutscene. Alright. Made it through the bees, and as a reward we get more bees. Coming up is probably 3 of the biggest run killers kind of grouped together into the beehive level set. Sticky walls from the cave levels of World 2 make a return as honey, and it's our job to not die, I guess. Which, as you can tell, the sticky walls don't like me living very much. Something I failed to mention is how much sticky walls love messing with your jump height. And that's just something that happens sometimes, but we're through the first one, and now we're getting to what I like to think is the worst of the 3 B levels. Apparently I hate it so much I'm trying to run away from it, but I can't do that. This is B Bonanza, and it is the level I like to cite as the hardest level in this game, so I'm gonna be concentrating here. I guess I should go into more depth, actually, about the sticky wall, aka honey, jump height, is that the only way to muffle getting a max jump off of the honey or sticky wall is by landing back in the sticky wall. Which I can do to kind of lose less time in midair or against walls, but sometimes in certain places of the level where there's no such thing to do, it kind of just means I'm gonna have to deal with a full height jump whether I want one or not. And that means I have to adapt kind of weirdly. Like that jump right there, where the ceiling is not very nice to you. But we're almost out of the beehive. We just have to deal with Waspy Warzone. That really scared me. Yeah, so again with homing bee placements and movements, where I can't scroll the camera upwards fast enough because of the game jumping, they like to mess you up. Okay, I was hoping that wouldn't happen there. But that platform can be really risky to land on at points, so... one of those things I like to prevent, but sometimes you just can't. Yeah, so I'm gonna try and take it the safe way here. Okay. That platform is really scary because of that red bee right there. If you don't know where it is, it will mess you up kind of more than anything else. And you can't track it easily. But now we get a new ability. We have our second item that shows up, and those are the wings, which allow us to do this glide for more airtime. It's not necessarily faster to be in the air. Didn't hit that for safety. So it doesn't matter whether I like to play around with the wings or not, but obviously the game is going to use a lot of things where we need to fly over them. It's preferred that I don't touch multiple wing power-ups because I do have to watch an animation of me getting a power-up every time I have one. So, you know, I want to touch the power-up once and hopefully not have to deal with that for the rest of the level, including getting hit. If I get sent to the Realm of Code with a power-up, I lose the power-up in the Realm of Code. And then I also have to get a new one when I'm back. So, as you can imagine, that might be a really big problem, say, with the armadillo items. Back in the levels we had those. If I had lost those, I would have been losing a lot more than the normal amount of time lost that a death takes. At that point, sometimes the best thing to do if you take hit is just to kind of reload the stage to not have to deal with some of the Realm of Code animation. Alright, that's a really easy level to back up, actually, is this level. Because once you're not over spikes, navigation becomes much less of a chore. And continuing with the kind of dangerous end level themes, for the last 3 levels of World 3, we have a spooky castle to go through. Okay, that was the game. I'm blaming it on the game. There's not a portal there. Portal placements are good. Here I'm gonna take this to be safe. I never mentioned it, but you can pick up those pink enemies and use them as projectiles. Which you can do for safety measures, like I like to do on that bat, and there's one other enemy that I'm gonna deal with one of those. I actually kind of have it routed to pick one of those up. Here we're gonna have a cutscene, and then jump right into spikes, because I guess. Okay. I kind of messed up a jump there, so I had to weave in between fireballs. That's a thing about this game. I mentioned improvisation, but one thing I didn't mention is it takes place in more than just the realm of code, because really if you mess up level routes, a lot of cycles live in specific areas of this game, and this place is one of the biggest culprits of that, where you can, if you lose a cycle, your route can be just horrible, even though it usually works fine. And there's not a portal that's easy to access here. Now, what's especially bad about this death is that right here, usually that enemy is one I like to take one of these grabby projectile guys for. However, I lost the grabby projectile guy. So I had to play that safe. But speaking of playing, let's talk about Dioma here. Because this is actually one of the worst portions of the whole run. So this is a chase sequence where I have to use the power-ups, both of them, from the previous 2 worlds, in order to try and reach a special gauntlet. And let's talk about the first thing, wingless. So, as you saw, there's a wing power-up that I was supposed to do that portion with, but I took the rolling power-up just to save a little bit of time. And I can do it technically with this power-up, but it's very difficult. To the point where it sometimes just won't be faster because, you know, how many times you have to stop to make sure your jumps are set up correctly. But the other part I want to talk about is this portion right here. As you can see with how she's catching up to me, okay, I'm going to play this the safe way. Yeah, she can kind of fluctuate in the speeds she moves. Which can make, once you grab that wing power-up that I clipped through the ceiling for, sometimes impossible to win. However, with a glitch on this game, where if you've already beaten Dioma on a save file, she will keep moving past the trigger she's supposed to stop there, you can use that floor clip, that ceiling clip, if you get it, which is fairly difficult, to more consistently actually finish the level, which leads us into World 4, where we now have the ability to roll full time, and as you can imagine, I love the ability to roll full time, because rolling is fast. And kind of buggy, actually. But the thing about rolling is that there's actually a lot of mechanics to rolling that we never got to fully explore in World 3 because of our very limited time with the Armadillo power-up. And that's really one of those things, is just how useful it is. But there is a major mechanic that we get to talk about very soon in the next stages, so for now I'm just gonna go through. Here's a cutscene. And I'm gonna actually take an extra realm of code path here that I... Alright. If you're a little bit confused, I can clarify here. That barrel cannon right after the checkpoint usually launches you into a pit of spikes, which is why I'm just voluntarily jumping into spikes myself. But I'll take the safe route this time. Alright, there we go. Funnily enough, the safe route actually has a jump that's fairly difficult that the faster route skips. Waiting for that one bullet that I bounced off of is really the major thing. But here, okay. I'm going to try this again, because this level's very cycle-based, and uses one of the weird rolling mechanics that I mentioned I was going to talk about. And that is rolling's preservation of speed. So as you can see here, I'm rolling very fast. Okay, let's try this one more time. But as you can see there, I was rolling very fast, and this is actually because if you keep rolling through something that usually changes speed, you'll keep the speed from whatever started your movement. And that leads to what I like to call roll speed canceling, in which I'm rolling with the barrel cannon speed. And that allows us to do that level way faster and meet barrel cycles that are kind of unexpected of us to meet. Which is why you really want to be in the rendered world for that level, and why I opted to do half of it again just to be in the rendered world. Plants? Okay, thanks. So now we're in the jungle levels for our next 3. And something important that happens in the jungle level is a cutscene right around the checkpoint of 4-4 there. With that cutscene, our jetpack is now recovered, meaning we now have a kind of robotic equivalent to the wing power-up that we saw in World 3. So now we have both of those to use at full time. And in combination with each other even, which is something we didn't get to do. We could have one or the other in terms of the power-ups, but now we get to use both. Once again, I'm going to take the safe route instead of the normal route that I like to take there. The ropes here auto-grab, so I don't really have a say in the matter in terms of where the ropes are going to take me. I'm going to reload the level to kind of do cycles right here. I'm looking for the cycle of that bottom guy right there to bounce on him. And then I'm looking to just go right into these spikes for most of the level. As we're peering the endgame, the Realm of Code becomes a very difficult place to stay alive in, as you can see. And that's kind of intended. You know, it's meant to kind of, in the story of the game, become more unsafe as the evil scientist Dr. Malik is playing around in here more and causing more disruption. As he tries to use the Realm of Code's power for his own evil schemes, which we kind of have the responsibility of taking him down as someone who can travel between the two realms. That's the story. In connection to 2 characters we met in this world, one of them being siblings, and one of them not supposed to be in the Realm of Code, but actually trapped here. I didn't want to land in the cannon there. But I guess things like that happen sometimes, which is funny. Speaking of funny, I don't know what just happened. But okay, if the game wants me to be here. We're through now. I'm going to take this checkpoint because really just with how this jungle area has been treating me, I'll play it safe, yeah. There we go. So now it's time for another aspect of roll speed canceling, where I'm going to use the roll to preserve speed. I'm going to use the speed of the roll to kind of use ground speed underwater, where when I start rolling and I go into the water from the ground, all the speed that I'm supposed to lose when I enter water doesn't get lost until I change direction or stop moving, which is useful at the beginning of that stage, but actually can't be used too much for the rest of the water levels here. Another thing is that the short jump that you get when you're curled up in a ball does apply to swimming. So whenever I'm swimming straight up, you're actually going to see me stop rolling, and that is because it helps me gain height faster. And I guess for the sake of explaining things, these clams in this level are leading me the wrong way. Slip of the brain there. These clams are cycle-based, not position or location-based, so... I do need to change my reaction to them depending on how I played the stage. Oh, okay. But now we get to one of the hardest endings in the whole run. The ending to 4-9 is kind of a gauntlet of enemies treating you poorly. But if you get through it, it's not too bad. As you saw, a fish swam through a wall to hit me, which... fun, right? But now we're in the city stages, where dreams go to die. This is a place I always pointed out while streaming this game, but as you can hear, this game's soundtrack is really good. And the city levels in general are just a lot of fun. And this one in particular is the most notable to me. This 411 is the most vertical-based level in the whole game. So instead of going left to right here, I'm actually going to be trying to go from the bottom of it to the top. And that makes it one of the most unique levels to play through in the run, because it changes the very aspect of how I'm moving, in a way. It changes from me, you know, using enemies to try and help me gain speed, to trying to maximize the control I have swapping between roll and human, to maximize the height I get and use it in optimal proportions. That was a really good run-through of the level with only one Realm of Code visit. Ideally, you don't enter the Realm of Code, but it's just one of the hardest levels. I feel like I've been explaining a lot of levels as one of the hardest, but I guess that just goes to show that this speed game is one that will tear you down if you're not careful with what you're doing. So... fine here, I'm gonna waste time rolling up that slope, because if I jump up it, I will constantly clip through the slope. And that's a problem with all of the slopes in the city levels, actually. They're just kind of not solid. Now, the way this game handles ice slipping is pretty weird, with this being our first ice-based level theme in any world. The way it works is straight up, there's some weird friction effects when you're human, or lack of friction effects rather, due to ice being slippery like that. However, what it leads to is it being a consistently slower thing to be on the ice when you're rolling. And that's bad, because we do not want our rolling to be slowed down. So I'm going to be trying to stay off the ice as much as possible. that was a really interesting way to do that level, but fortunately the height worked out how I wanted it to. And I was able to get through. Now this level is interesting because there are a lot of just bigs in this stage. From Surprise B, that likes to ruin your day, to bonking on a very improbable ceiling. I think the amount of things that I said like to ruin your day kind of fits aptly into the assets used to make this stage here. Okay. But at the end of the level, it's actually really easy to make it under that bullet instead of having to wait for it. And this leads us into the final 3 levels, the kind of evil mansion levels. I mentioned Dr. Malik, the evil scientist, earlier. This is his mansion. So we're very close to the big confrontation of, you know, evil no good doctor versus robotic blue silent protagonist, where, wonder where I've heard that one before. But in all seriousness, it is a very exciting conclusion to the run. These 3 levels do not, you know, do not slow the pace from the rest of the game, but they definitely, you know, aren't the most challenging. So it's a fairly nice place to stake a conclusion, especially with the music here being very calm. With hints of danger, which is kind of what this stage is. Actually, now that I think about it, that's a great way to describe the entirety of the last 3 levels before the final boss, is hints of danger. Because if your movement is on an, unless you're like on an off day on your movement, there's not a lot of things that go wrong in these stages. The worst thing that you can do is mess up your cycles, which hopefully shouldn't happen, because the cycles in the stage are, they vary, actually. Some of the cycles in the stage are very mean, some of them are very nice. Okay, I got an optimal there. Those holes on the floor are really hard to fit through, so it can be kind of difficult to do this level on perfect cycle. Dying will get you on no cycle, but I still made this cycle, so life's good. Yeah, the thing about dying in this stage is it can be very hard to actually make the very beginning platform cycle. I did not do my full cancel there. That's another good thing I like about this game. A lot of problems are identifiable, so if I do something wrong, I know what it is, and that's just a factor of the low luck-based elements of this game, is that I know what I'm doing. It's not necessarily easy enough to keep you in control, but it is easy enough to keep you in check, if that makes any sort of sense. Yeah, so that's one of the meaner cycles that I just made right there. Not the meanest, but one of the meaner. I'll talk about the meanest when I get there, which I'm getting close to getting there. It's this place right here. Nope, not even close. So I need to go down here, but this moving spike is very, you know, not wanting me to go down there. But I got down here, and now we're going to be heading into the final boss after a long roll of nothing. So now coming up is going to be the final showdown with Dr. Malik. Right after I accidentally go back to the title screen. Yeah, so I accidentally pressed the roll key too early there, and it acted as my back button, which is what happened. So, in the first stage of the final fight, the sibling of the person we're trying to save gets possessed by Dr. Malik and is going to fight us. This is, along with the first boss, a case of luck in the run, where after 3 rounds of fire, every time this boss goes along the bottom of the screen, he's going to roll. And when he rolls, we can damage him. Now, we need to damage him 5 times. However, if he goes on the top like that, we can't damage him in any way. So, it's kind of luck based on whether we are going to get him above or below. This guy takes 5 hits, so 1 more hit, and we should be on to the next part of the fight. Where we're gonna have a boss rush. All 3 of the previous bosses are returning in a kind of fusion between the Realm of Code and the rendered world, where we can't go back to the Realm of Code if we take damage. We just restart whatever boss in the boss rush we're currently trying to fight. Which means that for these first 2 bosses, we're usually supposed to go to the Realm of Code to refresh something, we will automatically get stuff like our platforms back. And our rock back. From the Adventurer and the Good Scientist, respectively. So coming up is a slightly shortened, but still fairly long fight against Snake Spear, where again, with regenerating platforms, and the left side blocked off to him by Dr. Malik's regeneration machine. Or this isn't Dr. Malik, this is the Good Scientist. I don't know his name off the top of my head. I don't even know if he has a name. But yeah, his machine is regenerating these platforms for us, which, thank you for that, because otherwise this would go a lot worse. We're almost done here. We just have to wait for him to reappear back on the right, and then this platform hit will be the one to end the fight. He has 2 hits in this. And just like the real World 2, we can't skip this cutscene halfway through the World 2. So we have to mash to get to Dioma. Now, Dioma is a fight that originally didn't use the Realm of Code. So the difference here is that in order to have this character from World 3 spawn the power-ups for us, we have to have a lower ceiling, which makes skipping the wings impossible, actually. So, of course, the one boss that we really didn't need to make harder is literally just a harder version of the fight on the refight. With no ceiling clip to save us if Dioma decides to burst forward like that, it's kind of scary. However, I fortunately made it first try, and we're now going to get to the end here. So timer ends when I actually reach the credits, which I'm going to do fairly shortly because I'm getting it on top of this machine to instantly get the hits there and kind of go against the ceiling to, yeah, get all 5 hits and end the fight and end the game. Kind of messed up on the timer, so that's 58:48, which is pretty good. This game is very ruthless, so getting a sub-hour is absolutely nothing to sneeze at, despite world record being a mid-56. So, that is BiT Evolution. As I mentioned, there's a challenge mode, but since we didn't get all the pixels in any of the stages, we can't play it. And that's all there is to this game. So, thank you, and I hope I get to play this for the marathon, because at the very least, I'm going to be going, but I can dream.